basically have a one-page summary of everything you own and everything you owe all on one sheet of paper. And that summary is just, all of your assets minus your debt is your net worth. Where are all the accounts that have my name on it? Because, as you mentioned at the beginning, if something were to happen to your husband, where do you have everything organized in a way that at least this is kind of the whole picture where we're at?
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Happy Life Agenda. I am Danny C., and I am so excited to be here with Stephanie Adams, certified financial planner from right here in Fort Worth, Texas. And she has some incredible advice for women who are navigating the complexities of money and financial planning. And if you feel like you don't know what is happening with your finances, you need to get control of your finances, or you just want to stay ahead of the curve for your financial planning, you need to turn up the volume and listen to this episode. So, Stephanie, welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're
Yeah.
here.
It's good to be with you today.
Yay. Well, I'm glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about yourself as we navigate this conversation.
Well, yeah, again, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, I'm a certified financial planner. I'm also a CPA. I've been working in the wealth management field for about 13 years now and just have served families and individuals and helping people navigate kind of the intricacies of wealth and getting their arms around it and having a financial plan for the future. And specifically in my role at Blue Trust, I get to help clients look at their finances and think through a faith lens. So, really
Okay.
thinking about, all right, what does the Bible say about money? And how does that impact and influence the way that I make and perceive financial decisions and legacy and all the things kind of related to that. So yeah, it's been a great a career and just a privilege to get to serve clients. I love my job and I love getting to tell people about it and helping people. It's we're all on a journey and it's kind of one step at a time towards transforming the way we think and operate. And so it's fun to
Absolutely.
get to be kind of a person that kind of guides clients through that. So that's what I do.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I do live in Fort Worth, as you mentioned. I love the Fort Worth area, and I grew up mostly here in town, and moved away for a while, and finally got back here about 5 years ago. And I am not married. I have two dogs, and I live near family, and so my life is sweet, and I
Okay.
love it here.
So fun. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. So, one of the things that I want to touch on that you just said is you kind of do faith-based financial planning. And, I would say I haven't paid attention, I guess you could say, to a lot of the things that the Bible says about money. Or I would even say, as a become an adult, that what I was kind of taught as a kid is a little bit different than what it's really saying or how it's interpreted. So, can you give us a little bit of background on that and kind of how you align what the Bible says with how you help out clients?
Yeah. Well, the Bible actually has, I think there's over 22,000, almost 2,500 verses on money in the Bible. And I
Wow.
talk about wealth, generosity, money, possessions, work ethic, even kind of concepts like retirement. Like, what is that? What does the Bible say about
Yeah.
that? So there's all kinds of truths, biblical truths that we kind of all actually inherently know. Things like, getting out of debt or being careful with debt is very much talked about in the Bible, or,
Interesting.
basically living below your means for a long period of time. We know that the accumulation of wealth and the preservation of wealth, which provides for our needs, provides for our families, that doesn't happen overnight. There's
Mhm.
no real get rich quick scheme that
Right.
actually works in the long run. So we talk about, working hard and saving for the future and putting money away to take care of your family and the obligation that we have to take care of those who depend on us, take care of ourselves. Those are all truths that are embedded in scripture in the Bible. So, and then just we love talking about generosity and hey,
Yes.
God's given us an ability to create wealth and to work hard and to save. And what also comes along with that is the opportunity to give to others and
Mhm.
financially, but also, with our time, talk about with our, treasure, our finances, our wealth, and then also with the gifts and talents that God's given us. So there's all kinds of facets to how that can play out, but not just kind of having a selfish mindset about accumulation of wealth, but having a purview that is, how can I help other people with what God's given me? And
Excellent. That's great. I've been listening to, a lot of podcasts lately, and there's a lot of conversations around generosity and how that really lends to the happiness, because a lot of us think that if we achieve wealth and we get the money and the car and the house, that we're finally going to be happy. But the people who do make it to those levels say, I wasn't happy until I started to give back. So I think that's awesome that that's a foundational element of your planning.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's better to give than to receive. That is straight from scripture, and a truth that once you really unlock that reality in your own life, either on the receiving end of it and the giving end of it, you just see this whole fruit that kind of can be born in your life through opening up your doors to other people and your resources to other people, and essentially just giving of yourself in a different way.
Yeah, amazing. So let's dive into some of the conversations that we have, you and I have talked about as we're preparing for this podcast. And that was, finances are a really personal thing. They're a very difficult
Mhm.
discussion topic for couples and even individuals. They often fail to manage their finances appropriately because we don't really have a formalized education system for learning finance, unless you're like someone like yourself who pursues it as a career. Otherwise, you're left to like, here's the example my parents set. Good luck.
Right.
So, I know you focus a lot of your work on and working with women. And so something you told me you noticed is that a lot of women, and I'm guilty of this too, my husband manages our finances. And
Mhm.
if something were to happen, I would really have to do a lot of work to recover and find out what was, going on. So can you take us through, about this common problem and how women can protect themselves?
Yes, yes, this is very common. Just, I think a lot of women, and not to stereotype 100%, because there are women. I mean, I love finances. I always have. It's just kind of how God wired me. But that's not typically the case that I see. And a lot of times women just can be very trusting. And I find that they just assume it's being taken care of, or it has been taken care of, or that it's almost like too hard to comprehend the future and the thought of someone not being around or not being taken care of, or like I just several clients who have had an unexpected death of their spouse. And actually the average age of a widow, in according to the US Census Bureau, is 59,
Oh my
and
gosh.
which is really shocking and kind of hard to believe in actuality when
Yeah.
you think about it. But that's what the statistics say, and just a lot of couples and single people who even aren't married. And if you are kind of used to running your own financial world and being the primary decision maker, it's just hard for most people to think about what the future holds and preparing for that in advance. And because we know that, things like having a will and having an estate plan and naming beneficiaries, like we know inherently that those things are important. But for those things to become urgent and things that we actually act on and take to heart and make sure to get in good order, it just has, those things have a tendency to kind of fall down the priority list and often just never get addressed. And so even really sophisticated people just end up without an estate plan and without having their finances in order for whatever reasons. It's just one of those things that can fall by the wayside. So I really try to encourage women to ask good questions, to lean in and engage. And first starting point I always start with is what I call a one pager, which is your net worth statement, and just thinking for everyone needs to know. Basically have a one-page summary of everything you own and everything you owe, all on one sheet of paper. And that summary is just, all of your assets minus your debt is your net worth. So
Okay.
most people just have never put that together or thought about it. And also you need to be keeping track of that on a regular basis. So, if that's annually, that is terrific. December 31st of every year or January 1st of every year, if you're tracking and where are all the accounts that have my name on it or my spouse's name, what property do we own, how is it titled, what are the vehicles we own, how are those titled,
Wow.
every account, every 401k that you have from a prior employer, where are those accounts held, who are the beneficiaries named on there. I've seen situations where ex-spouses are still named as beneficiaries on accounts, or there's no beneficiary named on an account. I mean, there are some pretty crazy horror stories about beneficiary naming issues
Oh my gosh.
when people pass away. So there's some low-hanging fruit that I would say you can pretty easily get your arms around. But it really starts with, again, that one-page document of, okay, where is everything at? Because, as you mentioned at the beginning, if something were to happen to your husband, like, where do you have everything organized in a way that at least this is kind of the whole picture where we're at, and then you kind of take things like one thing at a time.
Yeah. Oh my
So
gosh.
I just always want to encourage women to, do you know what you own and what you owe right now,
Yeah.
and keeping track of that.
Wow, that's really important. I like kind of how simple it is though. It's really just a one sheet that if you, put it in the calendar and once a year you make sure that you're going through and keeping it updated together. That's not a scary conversation if you just like, plan for it and have it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I
And
love it.
yep, it helps facilitate conversation and just helps kind of keep track of things. And to see from a financial planning standpoint, year over year, you can see is our net worth growing over time.
Right.
And then there's the cash flow piece of your kind of your spending plan, your giving plan, your savings plan. Your inflow minus your outflow, is that positive at the end of every year? That's the goal, to be positive. And so that's that contributes to your net worth growing over time. So as it relates to financial goals, having that one pager just helps track a lot of different things for different reasons.
Excellent. Well, I love that advice. So the next topic that I want to cover is kind of, aligned with that, but you and I have talked a lot about like, we're getting married, older women, we're having babies older, all of those types of things. And so a lot of times when a woman enters a marriage these days, she already has some, financial means or financial wealth. And so she's getting married and, it's kind of like, oh, I trust my husband and I don't need to, or future husband, I don't need to worry about this. But you have told me that, it's really important to put a plan in place. So can you talk a little bit about how women, now that we're getting married older, can protect themselves before they enter into a long-term relationship or a marriage?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's such a great conversation to have, both, leading up to a marriage, when you're entering into, a lifelong commitment. And when you do bring assets into a relationship, there are just things to consider, and lots of nuances to that. So it's hard to speak to it at large, but I think there are a few considerations that, everyone can kind of think through. But
Sure.
one, depending on what state you live in, there are protections around what's called your separate property, what you bring into your marriage that you've kind of accumulated prior to getting married. So, like in the state of Texas, we have laws that protect separate property and inherited property. That doesn't just automatically make those assets joint community property when you get married.
Oh,
There are, however, considerations, about the income that comes off of those type of assets becoming joint property, and kind of there's administrative nuances that are really important to talk through with a professional advisor. And there's legal ramifications, there are financial ramifications. So it's good. I think I just always want to encourage people to have a professional advisor in your life, and who can help you understand what those, both the financial and the legal ramifications are to financial decisions, and that you have in spaces that are new, like entering into marriage, and especially if you are bringing in assets to the relationship. If you have children, maybe from a prior relationship, or if you've got a prior marriage, if you have substantial inheritance that you're bringing into the marriage or expecting to receive, if you own a business and there are
That's
other
a good one.
partners in the business, that can, you have this potentially really valuable asset in your ownership in the company. And when you are become married, there can be nuances to just planning for that from a financial standpoint, and just making sure that if something were to happen to you and you're the partner in the business, you want to make sure that your ownership passes to your spouse in a way that's not going
Right.
to, not that would you would want to happen. So thinking
Right.
through, and you'd want to seek out guidance from an attorney on that, and again, a financial advisor could also help walk through that. So I think there's just, and there's a lot of nuances as you're
Mhm.
thinking about blending finances, and how to practically do that. Like, how should my accounts be titled? There's tenant in common, there's joint community property. There's different titles, different ways of titling assets that just kind of depend on your situation and your financial goals and your individual state laws. So
Right.
talking with a professional about that is, very advisable, and worth having, I think, before you get married, and kind of as
Mhm.
you're walking through premarital counseling, perhaps, or just getting ready for marriage. Finances is a huge component of
Mhm.
two
Mhm.
people coming together. So from a
Absolutely.
logistical standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, there's lots of levels to it, and having professionals kind of guide you through that process, I think, is really important, and can allow for really good, meaningful conversations and a lot of
Mhm.
unity, hopefully, going into marriage. So you're not just kind of going in like, okay, are we going to start, who's paying what bill from what account, but having some intentionality around how you want to shape that part of your marriage, going forward, I think, is really good on the front end.
I think that's such an important tip right there because, as part of the Happy Life agenda, we talk a lot about, what is happiness. And a lot of times the reason that we're afraid to have these hard conversations, be it about finance or anything, when they're into a relationship, whether it be marriage, friendship, is we're like, oh, they're not going to like me. This is going to rock the boat. But if it does, then it's not the right person. It's not the right thing. So it's okay to have these conversations because it's better to find out early and before you jump off than to like get in and have this whole financial unraveling and perhaps lose big. So I think that
Right,
that's great, a great point that
absolutely,
you make.
and you don't wanna have, yeah, you don't wanna have financial surprises in relationships, especially in marriage, and, I think having those conversations, and we all have financial, consequences from the decisions that we've made, and we've all made financial mistakes.
Yes.
So be of good heart that everyone can relate to that. And I think, but bringing that to the table, and owning that, and I mean, even if you've got a bunch of debt, if you have, a bad credit score, if
Mhm,
you have been through bankruptcy, or some pretty serious financial issues, it's best to talk about that on the front end. Like, hey, this
mhm,
is what I've
mhm,
learned, this is how I'm working out of that. Sharing openly. Some people who are who've been really financially responsible and just kind of grew up in a healthy financial atmosphere and just learned some really good principles and have implemented those, can take it for granted that most
mhm,
people, the vast majority of people, did not grow up that way, and have some kind of financial issues that they have to work through. And
mhm,
a lot of
mhm,
times those have deeper rooted issues at hand. And I think talking through that pre-marriage is so important, and making sure that you're aligned, and that
mhm,
both there's humility there on both sides, and a desire to unify and work together and seek help. I mean, financial
mhm,
advisor is kind of a practical guide and advisor. And then a lot of times there's deeper layers that show up in finances. So, a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
times marriage counselor, professional licensed mental health counselor can be very complementary to a financial advisor
mhm.
dynamic.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
we all have financial belief systems that aren't necessarily well informed and may have
Mhm,
some deep wounds even involved
mhm.
that can be unpacked through professional counseling in hand with professional financial guidance as well. So
Absolutely. That's such a great point. We have a resident expert here, Dr. Mary Haneke, and she's a licensed marriage and family therapist. And she has talked before, about one of the, top reasons that people get divorced is I think it's in the top five is, finances and not being able to come to agreements or communicate about it. So I think it's great that you bring up the point that they go hand in hand.
yeah.
So let's switch subjects just a little bit. When we were preparing for this podcast, we talked a little bit about how like your attitudes towards money can really shape how you manage it. And I think that
Mhm.
I shared a story of like if you were to personify money, how would you approach it? And one of the women that was talking on another podcast, she was saying, oh, I love money. I would like throw it on the floor and kiss it if it came through my door. Whereas other people are like, oh, I wouldn't even look it in the eyes. So, can you talk to us a little bit about how, your attitudes towards money growing up, like, is money the root of all evil or they handled it very well, can shape how you're able to manage money? And then how can you unravel from that
Mhm.
if it's negative?
Yeah. I think that money is a tool. I think at the core of it, it's a tool, it's a resource that it's all God's at the end of the day. That's a belief system that the Bible speaks to, and the ramifications of the belief of that and the working out of that are pretty tremendous and life altering.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
you really think about money as uh, a tool that God gives us in different amounts, quantities, seasons of life. But it's always present in our life, and we always have a need for money as a means of providing for ourselves and for our families. It can be a tool to bless other people, as we talked about. It can be a tool to um, leave a legacy behind for your family to provide for future generations, and to just be generous with. So there's lots of uses for money as a tool, and I think that we're all um, to some extent negatively impacted by it, in that our culture is very much consumption driven,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're just no one thinks that they have enough. Generally speaking,
Mhm.
we all have this kind of innate desire for more, which is
Mhm.
greed at the root of it. It's just we
Absolutely.
never have enough. There's always something more we want. There's always something we can all think about, that if I had more I would buy this, or I
Mhm.
would save it. But even savings can become an idol and
Mhm.
become kind of out of balance. So I think it's a tool that allows us to trust the Lord and learn how to um, be content with what He's given us, and understand that even the market will always fluctuate. There will always be uncertainty in the future. Those things are guaranteed. So
Mhm.
we have no idea what's coming next. And a lot of times in our financial planning, we talk about having this miscellaneous category or this unexpected expense category, because we all have expenses and things that come up in life that we don't anticipate coming, and which can
Mhm.
be an unexpected windfall or an unexpected medical expense or any number of things
Yeah.
that we encounter in
Yeah.
life. So we know the future is uncertain, but we also
Mhm.
know that if you believe that God owns it all and provides, then you don't have to worry about the future at the
Mhm.
end of the day. It's, can I make wise financial decisions with the information I have? Can I work hard? Can I live below my means? Can I be generous to other
Mhm.
people? Can I be working to get out of debt? And if you're
Mhm.
kind of working those principles, meanwhile, just trusting God's going to provide, then
Mhm.
you can live in freedom of not having to constantly be burdened by trying to accumulate more money.
Right. That's a great point because, our one of our taglines for Happy Life Agenda is faith over fear. And the management of money, it requires a lot of faith because a lot of times we live in fear, what you said, don't have enough. And, I'm even teaching my daughter like the practice of gratitude and like for all the things that we do have can make you really feel wealthy and abundant. And then that's when you start to attract more of the things that you need, rather than it being coming from a place of lack. So I love that that's fundamental to your business.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yep. Abundance over scarcity.
mhm, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so this has been an insightful conversation. You've told us so many amazing things. So, one of the most important things I like to discuss is how does someone choose a financial planner? And, like, even though you're in Texas, we have listeners from all over the nation. Can they still come and work with you, or do they have to meet in person? Do you have to be, certified in a certain state? Can you give us a little bit of background on choosing a financial
Yeah.
planner?
Yeah, I always want to encourage people. It's, the role of a financial advisor in your life is a really intimate role. And when you're talking about money and you're talking about your personal financial life,
Mhm.
a lot of different topics end up coming up. And I
Sure.
mean, your background, your family history, your current family structure,
Mhm.
what you're trying to achieve and what your purpose is in life and how you want to work that out and your
Mhm.
financial goals and then your future, your next generation, what you're leaving behind, your legacy. Those are
Mhm.
all conversations that end up coming up. So when it comes to selecting a financial advisor, I just always encourage people to think you want a like-minded, like-hearted person who has the same kind of worldview and who has a
Yeah.
faith-aligned perspective and is, rooted in scripture and the truth
Mhm.
and is going to
Mhm.
challenge you in line with that because ultimately we don't just want advisors in our life who just, you know, pat us on the back and, give us the thumbs up all the time. We want people to push back on us and
Mhm.
challenge us in the way that we're operating and thinking and making decisions. So your financial advisor, who you choose is just really important. So I would just
Absolutely.
say someone who's philosophically, spiritually aligned with you. And then beyond that, credentials, I think certified financial planner is not that someone has to have that, but that is a credential that's recognized in the industry. There's big banks, there's small banks, there's different size institutions who offer different services based on your
Mhm.
particular wealth complexity and needs. So, kind of understanding what services they provide. We are a fee only company, so we don't sell any products, we don't make any commissions.
Okay.
That can be perceived as, perhaps making um, advice subjective if your advisor is going to
Mhm.
make more money by putting you in this product or selling you this life insurance. It could be perceived
Gotcha.
to conflict with their objectivity. So just understanding, how is your advisor paid? How are you paid?
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
do I
That's a
pay
good
you?
point.
Because this is an exchange. I'm paying you for your professional services. So just understanding how that person's getting paid is important. Understanding their credentials, the capability of their company. I think it's helpful when someone, I think it is tremendously beneficial that I work with a team and we have 450 plus employees at my firm. And I leverage the knowledge and experience of my colleagues to help better serve my clients. So I think
Excellent.
that, not that there are numerous advisors who are solo advisors and who are excellent. So
Mhm.
not to say that you have to work at a big company to have, good advice, but there are things, understanding someone's background.
Mhm.
What is your work experience? What clients have you served? Kind of understanding, am I a client? Am I like your largest client? Am I your smallest client? Am I kind of your bread and butter client?
Okay.
Um, just, your complexity, is that a good fit for your particular advisor, is really important too, so that you're kind of, you as their client are operating in their sweet spot, and you're benefiting from the experience that your advisor is continuing to grow. Every client meeting, I'm learning something new and growing. So as on the other end of it, as the client, are you really matched well with your advisor from an experience standpoint, and who they best serve? So
Wow.
yeah, that's what I think.
That's great. I like that advice. I've worked in, healthcare and medicine for a very long time. And so I like that a lot of the points that you make is kind of the same as choosing a healthcare provider and a doctor. And one of the biggest things in any organization that I've worked for is that the doctors had like this brain trust of other doctors, because just like
Mhm.
medicine, there can be complex cases and you need somebody else, an expert to like bounce it off of, talk it through with. And so that's just an additional benefit to your clients. So I really love
Right.
that you pointed that out. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one question I want to make sure we cover is, you're in Texas. Do you have to be in the same state as your financial provider? Is that
No.
kind of like real estate? No. Okay.
Yeah, you do not. No, definitely. People. I have clients who live in different states and who
Okay.
move by state, and that's not typically an issue. And just check with your advisor and who you're thinking about working with, and make sure that it should not be an issue. But just from a practicality standpoint, some people really like to meet with their advisor in person. Some people don't mind meeting over Zoom, or a combination of the two. If you're the type of person who just really wants to meet, in an office, or, over dinner or whatever with your advisor, that might be a consideration. Some people that really matters too. But otherwise, from a professional standpoint, it shouldn't be an issue, state by state, but just double check with the person that you're thinking about working with, and make sure that they're set up for that.
Okay, perfect. That's great advice. And then, the common question that comes up is, and I think you've answered it, but I just want the audience to hear is, don't wait until we're wealthy to seek financial planning support and as financial advisor. Is that correct?
Yes, that definitely correct. And we're all on this financial journey of developing, our wealth, essentially,
Mhm.
and different layers of that. And along the way, you're making decisions that will either positively or negatively affect your future. So I think having a financial advisor, and it doesn't mean that you have to meet with your financial advisor, 4 times a year. It doesn't have to necessarily be um, a cumbersome relationship, or even from a cost standpoint. But I think having someone who knows you over a long period of time and helps walk through different seasons of life, different financial decisions that come up, will benefit you in the long run. The sooner the better. It's never too late to engage professional help, and guidance, and it's never too early to either. So
That's
I just always encourage people, everyone needs an objective third party professional to help them. Even at our firm, we all financial advisors at my firm are required to have a personal financial advisor within the firm, who we meet with
ah,
on an annual basis. So I have an internal financial advisor, and we have to attest to meeting and reviewing my financial plan every year, just from an accountability standpoint, that we're, minding to our own financial needs, and being responsible with our personal financial decision making. So we believe everyone needs a financial advisor in their life, and to help guide.
that's great. That's great that your company does that, because, it's kind of that checks and balances. If you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk. And I think more organizations and industries should have those checks and balances, because, it really, it probably makes a big difference.
Totally.
So
Yeah. Great.
wonderful. Well, so, we've had an amazing conversation. You give us some really, really great tips. So if people wanted to work with you, reach out to you, where can they learn more about you and the firm that you work with?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, feel free to reach out to me by email, or call me. And our website is bluetrust.com, and we have advisors all over the country. And we serve 10,000 Christian families across the United States. And kind of we serve a variety of clients along the wealth spectrum. So really, we've got different models of service depending on complexity of wealth. So always love having conversations with people and seeing, how could we best serve you? Who within our company might be the best fit to work with you, and from a need standpoint, from a location standpoint, just yeah, been always welcome phone call or email or however best to reach out. But yeah, would love to talk.
Okay, excellent. Well, for all of my Happy Life Agenda listeners, I will be posting Stephanie's bio and her headshot and everything on the website. So you'll be able to pick up that information and learn more. And then, of course, we'll be featuring the episode on social media. So make sure you follow us there and click subscribe below so you don't miss another episode. And then I want to just kind of really quickly go over two of the things that really resonated with me that Stephanie said, because it's always good to kind of bring it back together. And that is that net worth one pager. I mean, I think that is such an amazing tip. So if you aren't doing that for yourself or in your marriage, I think that's a good thing to get on the calendar. I know I'm going to do that. And then if you don't have a certified financial advisor, I think that this is the second time I've interviewed a financial advisor. And we even had a guest who wasn't one who said it is by and far the most important thing that you can do to be able to attract that wealth and that financial stability that many of us are looking for. So if you don't have a financial planner, definitely reach out to Stephanie and Blue Trust. And Stephanie, I can't thank you enough for being on and sharing these amazing information with
Thank
us.
you
And
for
I look
having
forward to
me.
talking to you
It's so
again.
great to be with you.
Well, thank you everyone for listening today. And I'll see y'all next time on the Happy Life Agenda.